This is TRYP FPV, and up until recently I was kind of guy to use only liftoff, but I managed to buy the Uncrashed FPV, TRYP FPV and a few more simulators. I made earlier a review about Uncrashed and now it's time to do it for the TRYP FPV. This simulator, by my personal opinion, is one of the most rich content FPV simulators you can find out there. It basically has at this moment only 4 maps, but it's more than a simple map. One map is like a giant zone with miles and miles wide. You can freestyle, you can race, you also have racing maps and challenges, you have all kind of content, and if you are into creating cinematic content, then definitely this simulator is for you. Now, I'm running this simulator on about medium graphics but a much lower resolution because I have an older computer. I have a HP with a 6GB video card, a GTX 1660 I think Ti. It's 6GB video card with 32GB of RAM and i7, and for some reason this simulator doesn't approve me to use at least full HD resolution and maximum details just to enjoy the details. Yes, I tried, and the details actually of this simulator are astonishing. Moreover, I also have the simulator on a MacBook Air with M2 CPU. If you know anything about the new MacBook Airs, they have actually passive cooling, and because the CPU are quite fast, when the thermals are getting to a specific degrees like 65-70 degrees, the CPU is throttling down, decreasing the performance just to maintain the temperature under control. And believe me, when you play games, when you train into simulators, that's gonna eat a lot of resources. And besides, it only has 8GB of RAM. But somehow, I was surprised that my MacBook Air with M2 CPU is working quite well. But even at a lower resolution and with not minimum details, minimum towards medium details, I was surprised that this simulator actually works good on my M2 MacBook Air. Now, what do I think about the actual content of this simulator? As I think I mentioned before, I can't remember what I spoke earlier, not only by my personal opinion, but definitely it's one of the richest content FPV simulators you can find out there. You can actually follow cars, motorbikes that are either drifting, racing, you have airplanes, hot air balloons, also have skis and so much more content to help you train into FPV under different scenarios. For instance, training when you have a hot air balloon, that's actually something which may prove useful in the future. For example, it's not difficult to make like delayed front power loop over the hot air balloon, but of course you need just a little bit of practice to understand the mechanics of how to do this. At this time, I only have about 5 hours of training in TRYP FPV. I have more than a dozen hours in liftoff simulator and a couple hours as well on Uncrashed FPV. By the way, if you're interested about Uncrashed FPV, I put a link down below. But at this time, I can say that I'm very pleased about TRYP. The drone mechanics are not the most realistic ones out there, but they are not the worst either. Neither the physics of the game are pretty much accurate, not the best, but neither the worst. If you are a beginner into FPV and you want to train into a simulator, indeed TRYP FPV is a very good choice and I do recommend it. If you don't like the TRYP FPV, you can try Liftoff Simulator. That's gonna be a little bit more challenging because the throttle doesn't respond exactly as it should and the drone is a little bit more drifty. But this comes into your advantage because if you learn how to train into Liftoff Simulator and fly well a drone there, in reality it's gonna be really easy. Even on the other simulators it's gonna be really easy in comparison. If you want to explore and train in with all kind of content, then TRYP FPV is definitely something to look forward to. Alright, that's all I can say for now. Thank you very much for watching and I hope to see you around.